Hello, you're watching What's Hot London, and this is Politically Hot. Britain is in the market for a new Prime Minister.
Though it's Conservative Party members who will be making the decision, their choice will have an impact on all of us.
With Boris Johnson the clear frontrunner, it's worth asking what a Boris-led country might look like.
Luckily, we have a case study right here in the City of London, where Boris Johnson was mayor for 8 years. Now, I didn't live here then, so I've decided to find out for myself. Was Boris a good mayor of London? And what can his mayorship here tell us about how he might govern the rest of the UK?
First, let's go all the way back to 2008 and the beginning of his reign.
This was right in the eye of the banking crisis and the recession that followed. Straight away, Boris allied himself with big business here in the City of London. Though his limited mayoral powers stopped him using policy to change things, he did use his words to condemn what he called banker bashing. He sided with those who caused the crash rather than those who are suffering from its consequences.
That dynamic continued throughout his reign. Though he promised to end homelessness in London by 2012, it had doubled by the end of his time in office. Even today, we are seeing that Boris is still batting for the richest people in our society, pledging, for instance, to cut taxes for those earning over £50,000 if he becomes Prime Minister.
So, a Boris Prime Ministership would most likely be pro-business, pro-free market capitalism, though this might come at the expense of workers' rights and rising inequality.
Boris has also made promises on crime, pledging 20,000 new bobbies on the beat if he's elected Prime Minister.
However, he has made similar claims before, promising 1,000 new police officers in 2012 who failed to materialise.
Now, the murder rate did fall during his tenure, an achievement which he put down to controversial stop and search powers. However, a 2016 Home Office report found that stop and search had no discernible crime-reducing effects.
From this, we can see that Prime Minister Boris would take a classical Conservative stance, asking for more police officers and remaining tough on crime, whether the evidence is on side or not.
We saw the outcomes of this policing policy in 2011, when the breakdown in police-community relations over which he presided led to the London riots.
He then failed to deal with the riots, refusing to come home from a holiday in Canada until after they were over, and purchasing an expensive water cannon, which was later sold for scrap without ever being used. At this point, I could trot out any number of his previous statements, from describing President Barack Obama as a part Kenyan with an ancestral dislike for the British Empire, to saying that Muslim women in burqas looked like letterboxes. The point is that Boris has never really had a grasp of racial sensitivity. Add to that his proposal to institute an Australian point-style immigration system, which exacerbates existing racial disparities and prevents immigrants from using the welfare state. And you can see that Prime Minister Boris Johnson would continue in the same vein as Theresa May, whose hostile environment policy created the Windrush scandal. Now, the water cannon wasn't Boris's only piece of showpiece spending. Time and again, he would create policy that made headlines, but they didn't always make change.
His initiatives including getting rid of the bendy buses, which Londoners hated, and replacing them with new Routemaster models, but they actually ended up costing more and being worse for the environment. He also championed Boris bikes, which were actually a creation of Ken Livingstone, despite the fact that they lose money year on year. Then there was the infamous Boris Island, and of course the £43 million wasted on the Garden Bridge.
Now, none of these have to be criticisms, except for the wasting of public money. But I mean, I love Boris bikes. Boris knows how to use public policy to feel-good effect, enacting popular initiatives whether or not they actually make sense. This is something we can expect him to do when he's Prime Minister. In fact, he's already suggested scrapping the sugar tax. While incredibly unpopular, it's on the front line in fighting our worsening obesity crisis. To be honest, Boris's performance as London Mayor wasn't bad, especially when you compare it to the dire expectations before he took office. Because of his limited policy power, we can learn less from his record. than we can from his attitudes. Boris Johnson is not a technocrat. He prefers sweeping statements to policy minutiae. He does lie, he does break promises, and he has a talent for gaffes. But he will most likely be chosen by Conservative Party members. Not because of his record here, but because of who he is. Boris Johnson brings a feel-good factor, whether that feeling is based in reality or not.
Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. What do you think of Boris Johnson? Let us know in the comments below. For more Politically Hot, make sure you subscribe to What's Hot London and hit that bell icon for notifications. Until next time, I'll see you later.